I have absolutely no doubt that just China and Russia did it as well. Attempts at getting people to be agents of social influence within the United Kingdom is a prevalent activity, and there are probably some other countries that try to do it as well.
We've been discussing this morning the pictures on the front page of today's Sunday Times of a suspected Chinese spy with David Cameron and Theresa May. This man, known officially right now as H6 due to reporting restrictions that are in place, had courted Prince Andrew as well and become a close confidant. Now, before he was banned from the UK, he went to several royal residences, including Buckingham Palace, and attended the Duke of York's birthday party. We're not quite sure the circumstances under which he encountered David Cameron and Theresa May at this stage. Let's speak now to the former Conservative MP and Attorney General Dominic Grieve. Good morning, Dominic. Good morning, Dominic. Can you hear me?
I can, yes, perfectly.
Good. We've got you loud and clear now, which is fab.
Good. Yeah, that's okay.
We want to speak to you because of the revelation, really, from you that ministers were advised years ago to introduce laws that would criminalise foreign agents, but so far this hasn't come to fruition. Just talk.
Well, it has come to fruition.
Go on, yeah. So what's the implementation of it, though?
It came. Well, I think it's come to fruition. You need to see how it's going to work in practice. But the National Security Act 2023 does make provision for exactly what has been asked for by members of the Intelligence and Security Committee and others for a very long time. So the problem for the future from that angle may be resolved, but it was not in operation at the time this episode took place in 2021 and in the years immediately before.
Understood, right. So that's very helpful clarification. So then, when you assess what we've been reporting on this weekend, whether with Prince Andrew or encounters with former Prime Ministers, as I say, the circumstances of which remain slightly unclear at this point, what do you make of that? Prince Andrew's been referred to by lots of our listeners and lots of our guests as something of a useful idiot when it comes to Chinese infiltration.
Well, I don't think I want to get involved in personalities because the reality is that the Chinese activity which has been disclosed is entirely banal. It's going on all the time. We know it's going on all the time. The Chinese have a state policy of trying to do two things. One is to acquire vast amounts of technological information from other countries because they believe it will help them boost their own technological expertise and give them an edge, and therefore they engage in industrial espionage on an epic scale. And secondly, they want to mould public opinion in foreign countries to their way of thinking. And for that reason, therefore, they try to use agents of influence at multiple levels to try and do that. I'm not sure it's very successful. In fact, I suspect it's very unsuccessful because, generally speaking, public opinion of China is very low. But you've got to bear in mind that certainly within the academic world particularly, it has a coercive quality in trying to deter academics from doing research or publishing any information which might be negative about China. And of course, they use their own diaspora, including the very large numbers of Chinese who may be over in this country studying, and try to control them. So, I mean, all this is very well known, and I'm not at all surprised that Chinese businessmen with potential links to the Communist Party have been photographed with prime ministers. It must be going on all the time.
You used the word banal a moment ago, which strikes me because it seems it is working. We've heard this morning from somebody who suggests that actually UK government efforts to engage with China, to work with China because of some long-term hope of economic boom as a result of that engagement is on the distant horizon. And they dismiss that and say actually the short-term harm is far greater. It's time to distance from China. Arguably, these agents of influence are securing engagement from the UK government.
Well, that's an interesting subject for debate. To what extent we should be engaging with China whilst being wary and perfectly aware of China's methods. This has been a problem bedeviling not just this government, but previous governments about the extent of it. David Cameron wanted a closer relationship with China. It's, after all, an important global player. Others at other times have been much more anxious about it. But I use the word banal because the idea that this event was in some way the one connected to the Duke of York was in some way exceptional doesn't strike me as being the case at all, because I'm quite satisfied in my own mind that the Chinese have been doing this for a long time. They tried to infiltrate an MP's office about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. So then, what do we need to do here? First of all, should an MP use parliamentary privilege to name the alleged spy in the days ahead, Dominic?
Well, that I think is a matter which I would recommend the MP to have a word with the Speaker about.
What would you do? Would you do it?
Well, I think I would want to decide in my own mind what the purpose was behind it. The point about Odysseus is you've got to bear in mind that the individual concerned has not been convicted of any criminal offence. He's simply been denied remaining in the United Kingdom. So I'm not sure it would breach. You have to check, first of all, what rule it would breach for this person to be named. If it doesn't breach such a rule, then there's no reason why parliamentary privilege shouldn't be used to identify the person concerned. But if it does breach a rule, clearly he was entitled to anonymity in the SIAC proceedings, then I think that would be more controversial, and I would consult the Speaker about it.
Yeah. Is there any concern on your part that our security services haven't done enough here to keep this alleged spy away from royalty and away from former prime ministers? Should actually our security services be more effective?
Well, I think our security services, certainly in the time when I had a degree of superintendence of them as chair of the Intelligence and Security Committee, my committee, I think they are pretty effective. In any case, I mean, they will have been advising ministers constantly, and indeed other public figures, that this is a Chinese practice. Nobody can be under any doubts about this. This has been going on for a long time. So I'm not, and they appear to have been quite effective in actually stopping this individual, identifying the fact that he was an agent of the Chinese state, and then taking the necessary action to deny him access to the United Kingdom.
There's no excuse, is there, for MPs or indeed royalty to be ignorant to the threat that China poses, to the Communist Party's actions and this method of trying to infiltrate. There's no excuses. MPs just need to be aware of this. They should be aware of this.
Everybody needs to be aware of it, but equally, one does also have to bear in mind that there are probably legitimate Chinese businessmen out there. Of course, yeah. And Britain has a historic link to Hong Kong, and therefore there are ties of friendship and social and business ties which are being maintained despite the nastiness of the Chinese regime. And then, of course, there are people who have settled in this country who've come from China and who are now British nationals and have British citizenship, and some of whom actually left China because they didn't like it. But some of those may be susceptible to pressure from the Chinese government. So one's got to keep all those things in mind. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that you can't have ordinary social relations.
In the interest of transparency, then, should we modernise this protocol of Parliament where MPs don't really say much about the royal family? Is it time that relationship was evolved in the interest of accountability?
No, I don't think so. I think it's rather irrelevant. And of course, you've got to bear in mind that in the case of the Duke of York, he's no longer a working royal at all. So actually, his capacity to exercise any sort of influence seems to me to have been rather negligible. It suggests to me the Chinese were probably barking up the wrong tree anyway.
Ian Duncan Smith says Prince Andrew should be transparent and the security services should investigate.
Well, if there is something to be investigated, yes. And I've no doubt that in those circumstances, the Duke of York would cooperate with it. But I mean, I think it's easy to get carried away by all this. I have no idea what the nature was of the exact contacts between the Duke of York and the individual concerned. They were clearly not of much of an official character at the end, because he's also entitled as a private individual to his life. But clearly, he's also, as is made quite clear by the statement he's put out, not desirous of trying to undermine UK national security. But I have absolutely no doubt that just China and Russia did it as well. Attempts at getting people to be agents of social influence within the United Kingdom is a prevalent activity. And there are probably some other countries that try to do it as well.
Dominic Grieve, really fascinating. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Cheers now. That's Dominic Grieve, former Conservative MP, former Attorney General as well. And as you heard him mention, he was also the chair of the Intelligence and Security Committee until 2019.